Out. All right.
Okay, you're recording.
This is the beginning of the program, Scattered Communities Among the World. I forgot.
Among the nations.
Among the nations. And this is inspired by a book of Ray's. And I don't know if other people obtained the book. And there's a website, Scattered Among the Nations. So, and we have 4 speakers. I'm only saying this because we just started recording. So, did you want me to show any pictures, Reva?
No, I have a few pictures that I'll hold up.
Okay.
And perhaps we'll be able to see them. If not, it's not a big deal.
All right. I'm going to put you in speaker view so it records that way.
Okay. All set?
Yeah, so remember, excuse me, just remember you're all unmuted. So if you say anything, then you'll take the main picture. So I could mute everybody and then you can individually unmute yourself, which you prefer.
All set?
Okay.
Thank you. Ray invited a group of us to select locations where communities described in the book Scattered Among the Nations have special meaning for us. I chose India because I lived there for a while and learned a little bit about the Jews living in that part of the world. And also I'm covering 2 of the parts of the old Soviet Union. And I've also spent time in Russia. When I was in my 20s, I arrived in India with my husband and toddler, little boy. And shortly after we settled in Hyderabad, India, I had appendicitis. And my first thought was to get out. I didn't want to have any surgery in India. I didn't trust the healthcare system there, particularly where we were living. However, I was told that it would be risky to fly out with an inflamed appendix. So I was afraid to get on an airplane with an appendix that might burst at some point. So I reluctantly agreed to having surgery in Hyderabad. And although I was very disconnected from my Jewish heritage at the time, I quickly realized that if I were to die in India, I wanted to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. And it turned out there was one in Goa on the western coast of India, not too far from Bombay. And it had a substantial Jewish community that was established by Portuguese refugees who were bailing out from the Spanish Inquisition. I thought perhaps some of you had had experience with the Jewish cemeteries around the globe also, and that they are vivid reminders of just how much Jews have scattered all over the globe. And Jews have been moving from one place to another for centuries, we know that. And they move to escape persecution or economic hardship and for trade. I want to show you the 2 areas in India that I'll be talking about. One is called Banay Menashe and the other one is called Banay Israel. I don't know if you can see this, but India is shaped kind of like an ice cream cone. You can see that. On one coast is one of the 2 communities that I'm talking about. And on the other coast is the other one. Judaism was one of the first foreign religions to arrive in India in recorded history. Like many other parts of the world, Jews have historically lived in India without any substantial anti-Semitism from the local majority population. There are a lot of different religions in India, and there really is quite a bit of tolerance. Also, the better established ancient communities have assimilated many of the Jewish ancient communities have assimilated many local traditions. And it is estimated that the Jewish population peaked at around 20,000 people in the mid-1940s in India. and it's rapidly declined due to the emigration to Israel after its creation in 1948. Now, Jewish communities have been scattered around India. Now, the first community I'm going to talk about is Banay Israel, translates Children of Israel. And the originators of this group were exiled from the land of Israel roughly 2,000 years ago. They were shipwrecked off the west coast of India, south of what is Mumbai. It used to be called Bombay. And according to their reported history, only 7 couples made it ashore alive. Now, 20 centuries later, many families from the original settlement remain in India. Now, although they were always a relatively small community, they were never fully assimilated, although they did adopt the Indian dress and local language. The community retained the Shema and maintained kosher laws and they rest on Shabbat. And they possess the largest synagogue in India. Now, a second wave of Jews arrived from Baghdad, Iraq in the 18th century and helped teach the Banay Israel community contemporary Jewish practices. These 2 older communities believed that they were related to ancient Jewish communities, but they didn't know very much about Judaism. Now, the Banay Israelites have maintained a special reverence for Jeremiah the prophet and have unique rituals and songs related to him. And in recent years, many from the community have left for Israel. However, the learners from this community who have remained in India have become leaders of India's Jewish community. Now, I want to speak about the second community in India of Jews. That's the Banay Menashe. They're on the northeastern border of India, on the Indian-Myanmar border. You've probably heard lots about Myanmar recently. It used to be called Burma. There's a lot of huge amount of civil unrest there. Now, it is hundreds of miles from any major city and even farther from the Jewish neighborhoods. And according to the Banay Menashe folklore, their forebears were among the 10 lost tribes, and they wandered to this remote corner of India by way of Afghanistan, China, and Southeast Asia. So these folks arrived there along the Silk Road. They claim descent from biblical Menashe, the eldest son of Joseph. Now, this tribe has been cut off from outside Jewish contact for centuries, but now maintain the hope that their fervent practice will lead them home to Israel. Prior to 1983, the community improvised its Jewish practices based on the understanding of the Bible. They observed Shabbat and some festivals, but did not know about any modern Jewish practices. They maintained obsolete sacrificial rituals. I don't know precisely what they were sacrificing, but they did some sort of sacrificing, referenced in the Torah, and it had a deep reverence for the patriarch Menashe. But in 1983, the community received and adopted an American Orthodox Ashkenazi prayer book. And in recent decades, more than 7,000 of the children of Menashe have embraced Orthodox Judaism and have crowded into approximately 20 makeshift synagogues made out of mud and bamboo. Today, the region is ravaged by tribal warfare, border conflicts, and drug-related violence. And I have a lovely picture that I hope you'll be able to see. Many of this Banay Menashe population has returned to Israel. And here's a picture, and the little girl is touching the mezuzah. And I hope you can see her. It's a lovely picture. And so this is one of the groups that's thrilled to be returning to Israel. Now I want to shift over now to the 2 former Soviet Union sites. The first is Azerbaijan, Krasnaya Sloboda. Now these Jewish communities were dramatically different from the ones in India. They have a much deeper knowledge of Judaism, but of course they face severe anti-Semitism historically, and certainly during the Soviet period. Krasnaya Sloboda is the last Jewish shtetl in the former USSR. Just want to point out the Soviet Union lasted between 1917 and 1991, 75 years. This location in Azerbaijan is a mountain town with virtually everyone from the barber to the butcher who are Jewish. And years ago, its learned men were widely known and prayed in 11 synagogues. So this was a major Jewish community. But during the communist era, all but one of the synagogues was closed and the rabbis were sent to Siberia. Those who grew up in the Soviet Union before Gorbachev were deprived of formal Jewish education. I know many of us know people who've arrived from Russia who had very, very little Jewish background, but consider themselves Jewish. Since the fall of communism, Jewish practice has revived on this hillside town of approximately 4,000 Jews. And the population has dwindled from its pre-Stalin peak of 18,000, but it remains the last predominantly Jewish village in the former Soviet Union. Now, although the communists closed most of the synagogues and practiced systematic suppression of the village, it never lost its Jewish character. And now it has revived, post-communism, has revived yeshivas for both boys and girls that are staffed with Israeli teachers. So there's really been a renaissance of Jewish practice in this part of the world. Now, the second site that I covered for the former Soviet Union is Bukhara and Samarkand, Uzbekistan. And this group has strong Jewish roots arriving from the Silk Road. The Jews of Bukhara, and maybe you've heard of the Bukharians, say that their ancestors originally arrived from shortly after the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem. They live on the southern edge of the former Soviet Union. They live 2,000 miles from Moscow, close to the Afghanistan border. Now, the Bukharian emir, emir is sort of like a king, gave the Jewish immigrants a neighborhood where they lived with relative autonomy for centuries and maintained Jewish traditions. Before the communist revolution, Bukhara had 18 synagogues. Afterwards, however, the communists closed down all but one, and Stalin closed down that one for 5 years. But unlike most other Jews in the former Soviet Union, the Bukharians never stopped practicing Judaism. With the threat of imprisonment, rabbis taught students hidden in rooms behind locked doors to avoid detection. And according to residents during this period, they changed minyan sites daily so that the KGB could not find them. Now, today, the Bukharian community is threatened by emigration to Israel and the US. And so now only 2,000 Jews remain in Uzbekistan, down from more than 20,000 residents. Now, here in Phoenix, we have substantial Bukharian community that includes a synagogue, Shaarei Tzion Ohel Bracha, located on 7th Street. They have a community center and an outstanding Bukharian restaurant called Cafe Shinar, located on 1601 East Bell Road. And we can put this in our notes. It has home-style Bukharian restaurant. It's in North Phoenix. It's a kosher restaurant. I understand the food is excellent. So that is another resource for us. Then I have one more thing I want to mention. Maybe some of you have this on your bookshelves. It's the Book of Jewish Food. Can you see it? Some of us are nodding, yes.
Yeah.
It is a fabulous resource of information about Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jews and their recipes. And it has wonderful stories about families from many of these countries. I consider it just a terrific resource, fun to read and fun to try some of the recipes. And in here, there's a Bukharian recipe. There's some Bukharian recipes that look delicious. They tend to mix fruit with meat. And I think it would be fun to try their restaurant. And I think it would be fun to try some of their recipes. That ends my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Rita, you've done
a beautiful job. I've been to that restaurant a couple of times, and it's interesting. It's run by a mother and son, and they come out and meet you. It's a pleasant time. Our second presenter is Lorraine Stola, and she's going to be talking about African Jews. There are 6 of them, and Lorraine is going to talk about 4 of them, and then we will go on to hear the last 2 from our next presenter. Lorraine, you're up.
You're muted, Lorraine.
Okay, yes, that I will vote for that restaurant. We should go as a group one day. It's not that far, it's in Phoenix. And it's really, really good, and it's not expensive. And the food portions are huge, so it's very good for sharing. Okay, Ray, I am only speaking on 1 community, not 4. I don't know if
Well,
we got
that's all right. Whatever you talk to us
Okay,
about.
okay. First of all, the one that fascinated me was called Outs Horn. And I didn't know how you say it, so I looked it up on Google, got good friend Mr. Google, and they gave me the breakdown on the pronunciation. So it's Outzhorn. And it's one of the last Jewish ostrich farms in the world, actually. And what caught my eye and why I wanted to do this is because they interviewed a young man whose father or grandfather is very involved in the community. And when they talked to the young man, his name is Ryan, nice Jewish name, right? And he said, I'm not going to school. When I finish this, I guess, grade school or whatever, he said, I'm going right to work because it brought it back to me. My husband worked with the Sephardic Jews in New Jersey. They were Syrian Jews. And when you looked at the yearbook of the young people, the young men that were graduating 8th grade, invariably, this is what you saw. I'm not going to college. I'm taking over my father's business. I want to make money. I'm not going to waste time learning. And the young ladies, they weren't going to college either. They were going to be mommies and live the life like their mothers lived, rather elegant and rich. So I said, well, I want to know more about these people that live the life of the people that I would meet when I would go to the functions that we were invited to. So this Jewish ostrich business became really lucrative. And it's very, very Orthodox religious traditions, despite the fact that ostrich is not kosher. It's supposed to be quite a delicacy. I don't know, has anyone eaten ostrich? I have not. In 1880, only a few Jewish men from Lithuania had settled in Outzhorn, each working as a schmooze. Schlepping, which we know means dragging and carrying, 80-pound sacks of groceries and necessities on his back to sell at far-flung ostrich farms owned by the Dutch settlers. Before long, the Livoks decided to drop every other kind of business and place their attention on collecting the flumes. from the farmers. Ray told me she has a necklace. Are you wearing it, Ray?
I do.
Show
This-
and tell. Ray,
This is
Ray
made
has,
from broken shells. They break them on purpose in Africa. They're smooth. They must have done something to make them smooth. They're not exact. They're shaped differently next to one another. And I got this in 1995 from a daughter-in-law who was living in Africa. This beaded craft is made from hatched ostrich eggs and has been registered. My necklace has been registered at the Wildlife Department in Gansi. Doesn't say what country, just the name of the town. And I have the 419th one made. And that was in 1995. I just love wearing them. And usually I wear them in the summer. It's very long.
Wow.
and it's not heavy.
Yes.
Very nice. Thank you, Ray.
Lorraine,
Yeah, Marcia.
there's in Escondido, California, I lived right near a ostrich farm. And just as an aside, an ostrich egg is about the equivalent to 12 chicken eggs.
Mhm.
And it's about so big. And we visited one time and they make purses out of the shells, and not even talking about the feathers and such, but and they are nasty animals too, stupid and nasty.
Okay, thank you, Marcia. The people that were doing the ostrich farming observed the Shabbat very seriously. And all week they'd be running around, but come Friday afternoon, they rushed back for Shabbat. And they became quite wealthy doing this ostrich trade. And they built the town's famous ostrich palace. And a family by the last name of Lipschitz continues to live as ostrich barons in Auschwitz. Okay, the Jewish population has dropped sharply when the market for ostrich feather fashions crashed after World War I. But the Lipschitz family clung to Jewish traditions with the other remaining Jewish families, of which there were not that many. Though Archon has not had its own rabbi since 1985, a minyan still gathers every Monday and Friday evening. And Isidore Barron and several of the Lipschitz men are regulars. And Jack Klass has served as the Jewish community president for 18 years. And he is receiving through the community much of the credit for preserving Auchon's Orthodox traditions. He was the world's largest ostrich farmer. Let me see, what else can I tell you about this? I thought it's interesting. I have always remarked to whoever's in the car with me, we could be driving in some godforsaken area, poor, maybe it looks like it's not white. And I always say two things. In this community, a gem is living, a young man or woman who has intelligence and desire to learn, and it's going to shine. And the other thing is, somewhere there's going to be a temple, because you know and I know if there are two Jews, we're going to have a need for a synagogue or somewhere to worship. And I just think that's super. Okay, now they asked this man who's the big shot of this town. He's the longtime municipal councilman and alderman and one-time candidate for the parliament. And they asked him, aren't you ready to retire? He said, yeah, I'm finally ready to retire, but not to rest. He said, my wife of 50 years and I can now write a book and travel. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to come and visit you. So we might get a knock on the door, one of us, from one of these, carrying an ostrich and its feathers. To sell ostrich meat, let's wait, this was good. They've never tasted the unkosher animal, which is really interesting. They're making all this money and they're involved in it, but they won't eat it because it's not kosher. And someone remarked, and I will end my remarks with that ostrich meat seems to them to be cleaner than chicken. And a lot of these people had chicken that day for lunch. So I don't know if ostrich feathers are ever going to come back into fashion popularity. However, I like Ray's necklace, so maybe there's a future in the necklace industry. The wine making. And I think it's exciting that they have a minion, that they have, because I know when we lived in New Jersey, we lived in a very small town. Very often we had to call people up to come for a minion. There were never enough people for the minion. I don't think they have this problem here. People are really looking forward to observing the Sabbath. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Thank you, Lorraine. You
You're
gave us
welcome, Ray.
you gave us some great insights into these people. I thought that I had assigned 3 others to you, and since we had a little misunderstanding, let me briefly talk about these others. The Bantu Jews of Uganda call themselves Abba Udaya, meaning people of Judah. And they're subsistence farmers. They have fields of mango and sugar cane and bananas and cassava. There's communal marriage, the death pray. They pray to the God of Israel. The local leader in 1919 became a Jewish survivor. He became isolated. That was in the time of Idi Amin, not a pleasant time. And this little group are a very joyful people. They love their music. They welcome visitors. Rabbis have come in and have converted many of them, because you know that the rabbis are going to want to be sure that they're Jewish, especially if they come out of Israel. They live in one-room mud homes. They play on a broken guitar. It doesn't matter. They just love music. Shema Yisrael, that's the name of a 38-year-old, and they call him Rabbi. He's actually been ordained, and he's actually attended a university. They keep kosher. There are 5 of them that live on a land and till the land. The men wear a head covering, and they won't work on Shabbat. They have talit, and their melodies are African with Hebrew words. They light candles for services. It's a true Jewish community. The American Kulanu group has helped them greatly. Kulanu is a Hebrew word meaning all of us, meaning that we, all of us, are here to help one another. When we find other Jews, somehow we have feeling for them. Another group, I wanted to show you a picture of them because believe me, can you see how black they are? They are really black, not mulatto looking like so many of our colored people are here. In West Africa, there is a group called the House of Israel. These Jews fled persecution in ancient Israel, and many of them are like the Ethiopian Jews. They were traders on Ghana's Gold Coast. Shabbat is always Saturday. Even funerals are postponed. Women are separated from the men at menstrual time. Boys are circumcised. They discovered Judaism in the 1970s. The local leader there had visions that the Sefwi people were really Jews. There are 200 of them, and they have many sayings from the Torah. And they're a long, long way from any other place in this part of Africa, and they truly act as Jews. Kulanu has sent them books, and if we get to the point of ever wanting to change our seders, we could easily send them all of our current ones, and they would be delighted to have them. They know dreidels because outsiders have sent them. The last of this group is out of the Marrakesh in Morocco. There were once 300 Jews there, and they're way up in the mountains, 2 hours from Marrakesh, where there are many, many synagogues and rabbis and institutions, most of whom have gone to Israel. Hanania El-Fassi is the only one left to guard the one tomb that is there. Now this Sadiq is very carefully protecting Rabbi Shlomo ben Hirsch's grave. Now, he died 500 years ago. He and his wife are the last 2 Jews there. And they both believe that Ben Hirsch's grave is perfect and miracles come from it. And they will not leave because they're going to stay there and watch over this grave. Their ancestors were Berbers who converted to Islam long ago. So he and his wife are the last, he is the last Jew. His wife has since died. So that takes care of 4 of our people. And while I'm talking, one of my sons is an economist and has lived in half a dozen African communities. He was in Zimbabwe for 3 years and never thought of looking up a Jewish community. Well, lo and behold, we're now going to hear from Nan Rubin, and she is going to talk about 2 more African communities that are very Jewish. And she's also going to talk about 2 European countries that are part of this network of unknown communities. Nan, you're on.
Thank you, Ray. The first country in Africa is Zimbabwe, and they have a Shona tabernacle. The Shona people were a Bantu group believed to migrate to South Africa from north, and they are Jews. They have traditional Jewish customs, circumcision at age 10, burial, agriculture, washing of the hands and feet, marriage, dowry, and the keeping of Shabbat. In the 1890s, a former American slave and Baptist deacon, William Saunders Crowdy, had visitation, quote, visitation, unquote, from God to lead his people to Judaism. Prophet Crowdy started a church in America. And in the early 1900s, an African visitor brought his teachings to Zimbabwe. Several thousand across Zimbabwe's neighboring countries joined and came to listen to the teachings. Rushape, I think that's how you pronounce it, is 2 hours from Harar, the main city, and there are 2,000 members. They sing African harmony in Hebrew, repeat in Shona. All hold that all men are sons of God, not just Jesus. And they all follow the Old Testament, believe they descended from the 12 tribes. Solomon Gwaza is a railway clerk musician using a shofar made from kudu horn, which is 2 feet long. Round clay homes have thatched roofs, white tabernacle near the man-made lake. And I guess that's where they gather to do their religious services. Ambrose Mukwaza is nearby Manicaland, gives Saturday sermons on Torah in Shona, and they have a cantor in Hebrew. They feast, mingle almost like a Baptist Congress, but yet they consider themselves to be fully Jewish. The next community is in Tunisia, and Shabbat in Tunisia is a little different. Tunisia is northern Africa, bordering on the Mediterranean. Djerba is a Mediterranean island just off the coast of Tunisia, and 2,600 years ago from Babylonia exile in 586 BCE, that people founded it. Some say 70 CE, when the Second Temple was gone, Jews moved to that area. Some were high priests, Kohanim, and one synagogue, La Griba, built on foundation laid around the door of the temple. Legend says the oldest Torah is hidden inside, is written on lambskin. Definitely continuous Jewish worship more than 2,000 years ago. More than 500 years ago, Inquisition Jews joined because it was very close to Spain, easy crossing. Jews that decided to emigrate from Spain for fear of death and did not want to convert to Christianity came and settled there. Persecutions have happened only since the State of Israel was formed in 1948. Shabbat, holidays, international tourists, especially Lag BaOmer, are celebrated, and Lag BaOmer is a 2-day celebration there, and they do get a lot of, or they did get a lot of tourists there. An Al-Qaeda attack in 2002 killed 22, mostly tourists, and now there are 10 plus active synagogues, with many of them small prayer halls. In Hara Kabria and Hara Sagira, over 1,000 practicing Jews weekly attend services. Now, I was very surprised at that. I had no idea there was such a large community. Blessings by Kohanim include most men. As Torah passes through, the ladies come from the balcony singing "Lulu Lulu 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 Lulu," and La Griba has Moorish stained glass windows, which is very common in that part of Africa. High archways. The 12 tribes of Israel are in each of a dozen panels of elaborate tiles. So you can see they do have a lot of Moorish influence and a lot of what the Arabic mosques, the Islamic mosques have. So it's done in that same style. And that's Tunisia. Now I'm going to go to Europe. We have the Ukraine survivors. And the region is around Vinnytsia, a city 4 hours southwest of Kiev. And it once boasted dozens of shtetls and hundreds of thousands of Jews. Today, those who survived the Cossacks, Tsars, Nazis, and communists, and who chose not to emigrate to Israel or the United States, number only several thousand. Few keep kosher or Shabbat, and fewer read Hebrew, but Jewish culture is beginning to thrive again. There are stories of people that who are just now relearning about their Judaism. The culture is undergoing a revival. Jews and Ukrainians are keenly interested in Yiddish theater and klezmer music. The holidays like Purim provide a perfect opportunity for showcasing community members' talents, silliness, and resilience. In the 1920s, Zemirinka had over 5,000 Jews and 9 synagogues. During World War II, the few thousand remaining Jews were concentrated within a ghetto. Hundreds on a very small street. Many were forced laborers at Zemirinka's industrial hub, its railway station. The Romanians, allied with the Nazis, controlled Zeminkia from the Zeminkian ghetto to the Germans to appease Hitler and maintain control over this region. Today, the railroad tracks are eerily quiet. By the dawn of the new millennium, the railway station, still Zemirinka's biggest business, employed a Jewish president. Most remaining Jews are elderly, and one young man reported that there were 5 fellow Jews with him in his 5th grade class, but by his high school graduation, there were none left. Nevertheless, since the community was established in 1994, people have become more involved, and they're trying to keep the Jewishness, customs, and culture going. They have a couple of synagogues with beautiful stained glass. Now there is a city of Bershad that now has 14,000 inhabitants, but fewer than 100 are Jews. This was another one of the larger cities. On Shabbat, 20 of those healthy enough among the remaining community kiss the century-old mezuzah on the synagogue doorframe and gather on the creaky benches before the original ark. The problem is that after decades of communist repressions, no one in the community can read Hebrew or Jewish prayers. The last rabbi left in 1956. they do hope that they can continue to keep their traditions, but we can see that this is a dying community, and with no young people left, there probably will not be more Jews in a very short time. The last area I'm going to talk about is Belmonte, Portugal, the mountain Marranos coming out of hiding. And these Jews are made up of the Jews who did flee Spain, Portugal being next door. It was a very easy trip for them to make. They did not have to go across water, didn't have to worry about traveling thousands of miles like the Russian Jews who left Russia and had to travel from Russia to Germany to France in order to really escape the horrors of what was going away. The Belmonte is 4 hours from Lisbon, and it's on Portugal's northeastern foothills. There is a couple, Julio and Mercedes Mendez, who reminisce about the songs they used to sing as Marranos, or secret Jews. Julio he has a plastic mezuzah on his doorpost, and he says, in the old days, our holidays were much happier. Mercedes begins singing one of the songs she learned from her mother in Portuguese, which says, "Our hope is not lost to return to the promised land and the powerful." Jewish communities thrived on the Iberian Peninsula before Spain and Portugal began their Inquisition. During the ensuing centuries of church and state-sponsored persecution, the Mendez ancestors and other Marranos formally converted to Christianity, but developed a host of unique traditions to keep their Judaism alive in isolated secrecy. For example, they gave their Marrano holidays intentionally, deceptively Christian-sounding names, though their celebrations remained essentially Jewish, praising God and invoking the promised land. For example, Passover became Santa Festa, the Holy Festival, and Shavuot became Quinta Feira de Ascension, or Ascension Thursday. And with this homegrown heritage, the Mendez's Belmont community survived the Inquisition, the only Iberian Jewish community to do so. After Portugal finally embraced democracy, Jewish organizations and well-wishers around the world rushed to encourage the Belmonte community's return to Orthodox Judaism. There are between 200 and 300 Marranos identified among the several thousand residents. Donors built a synagogue on the finest land in the ancient Judea. In the late 1980s, approximately 80 people, including the Mendez family, formally converted back to Judaism. Mercedes' elderly parents were among the first in Belmonte to embrace the Jewish Renaissance. Anton Diego had a Brit Milah, or circumcision, at age 79, and attended every service at the new synagogue from its opening until he died many years later. But Anna Malaria, the sister, said dozens from each family used to go to the country on holidays and sing their songs. The rabbi came and said it was bad, so we lost everything. People are now starting to learn or relearn the Hebrew and the Ladino traditions that they took from Spain. Time will tell if the pain is too much for Belmonte's new ancient Jewish community to bear. The author did visit this community in 2001 and got his photographs at that time. During the Inquisition, one side note, during the Inquisition, The new Christians etched crosses on their doorposts to prove to their neighbors they were committed to Christianity and not having mezuzahs. However, unlike most hidden Jewish communities, Belmonte's isolated community maintained its Marrano identity for 500 years. It's the only significant Jewish community on the Iberian Peninsula. And these etched crosses do remind them of their Christianity past. Now, as an aside, I know there are Jewish heritage tours in Portugal that you can take. And I have made contact with a Moroccan guide who does tours and Jewish heritage tours. And that is my bucket list, either in 2022 or 2023, God willing, and we can travel safely out of the country. I would like to do a 10 to 14-day tour with this guide. He will do small, if more than, just myself want to go, he'll do private or small groups. But I'm thinking it would be fascinating because having visited Morocco, I never saw a Jewish star on a building. I knew there were Jews that had lived there. There is a Moroccan Jew who now owns a restaurant in New York City. So I know they are there, and I think their population right now is down to just several hundred. But I'm thinking it would be fascinating to, learn about the history. So if anybody is interested, let me know, and maybe we could do a trip. I have to price it out, but it just sounds really fascinating. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Very nice.
And,
That was great.
and
Yeah,
Yes.
very nice.
Evelyn, you said you wanted?
you did a darn good job.
Oh, thank you.
That was
And I
wonderful.
thank you.
Mhm.
Well, we're not done, ladies. We have to do South America. And Minna Kalish is going to do it.
Sorry, she needs to be unmuted.
What's that?
You need
Thanks,
to-
Ray. Thank you, Ray. I was asked to do Latin America, which would include Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, and Peru. So I'm going to start with Argentina, where they were called the Jewish Gauchos. A European Jewish philanthropist named Baron Maurice de Hirsch purchased himself 1.5 million acres in the middle of the Argentinian countryside, and he gave the land away to Jewish refugees fleeing the pogroms in Russia. They founded the village of Mosesville, named after him, of course, the Baron's Hebrew name. And the settlers, many more settlers arrived after escaping the Nazis in the 1930s. The synagogue was named Congregation Israelita Baron Hirsch. It's 4 stories high, has a center bema that looks like an ornate chorale. It's painted a royal blue with white and gold. It has no heat, no air conditioning, and it's still used today. The community was the first agricultural Jewish colony in South America. The closest city to this community is 10 hours away if you travel northwest to Buenos Aires. The community at its height had 7,000 Jews who were farmers and ranchers. The population was 95% Jewish until the 1940s. The members of the Jewish community claim that they persevere because they are cleverer and stronger than most others, and they learned how to survive on the harsh pampas of Argentina. Mosesville continues to thrive today because the ranchers fulfill the demand for beef, which is a tremendous staple in Argentina. The town or community has also applied to be a UNESCO heritage site, which is a landmark with legal protection by the UN. and it continues to thrive, with many of their residents staying and some make Aliyah to Israel. The second community is called the Jungle Jews of the Amazon. There are two specific communities. One is called Amazonia and the other is called Para. Around 1697, Moroccan Jews began arriving in the Amazon region, seeking their fortune in black gold, which was rubber, and other products of the Amazon. They settled near the narrowest and swiftest part of the Amazon River. Not only the city of Belém, which is the capital of the state of Para, but many other villages, including Obidos, a small town at the heart of Para. The residents maintained Moroccan Brazilian traditions as well as Sephardic practices. Between 1810 and 1910, 1,000 Jewish families lived in this area. They made their living trading hardwoods, animal hides, plants used for medicines, colognes, spices, and aphrodisiacs. Today, many of them make their money and are quite prosperous selling Brazil nuts. The residents don't feel isolated from the world because they say they live on the best road in the world, the Amazon River. They are also a 5-hour flight from Sao Paulo. Through assimilation, dispersal, and isolation as a Jewish community, there is a real threat to their existence.
Around her?
They feel they have no prospects for marriage unless you marry a cousin. The fear remains that intermarriage will destroy the community. There are 2 rabbis who service the Jews in the Brazilian Amazon. One is Rabbi Moses, who grew up in Belém and was educated in Jerusalem and returned to Obidos to help the community survive. The neighboring community of Belém boasts 3 Orthodox congregations. Meanwhile, a group very active in Israel called Kulanu has purchased a lot of land in Brasilia and converted it to a kibbutz. It has a synagogue, a garden, 3 or 4 families live inside with a guest room. The majority of the community consists of former evangelicals or Messianic Jews for Jesus that decided they wanted to practice traditional Judaism. Over the last few years, they have strived more toward egalitarian ideals to flourish as a burgeoning spiritual community in which women have participated more in services and share large Shabbat dinners together after Friday night services. Moving on to Mexico. It was interesting. Today, I got an email from the World Jewish Congress saying that they're going to be working on Jewish communities throughout the world. Would I offer them my support? But this is what I felt was interesting enough to bring to the table today. Mexico has the 14th largest Jewish population in the world, with the majority living in Mexico City. Characterized by strongly traditional communities, Mexican Jewry is comprised of Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and Levantine Jews, which are from the region of the East Mediterranean, from countries like Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. It is considered to be one of the most active Jewish communities in the world. 95% of Mexican Jews are affiliated with an institution involved in Jewish religious life. It is no wonder that Mexico City is home to 25 synagogues. But that's modern day. I'm going to go back to historic and tell you a little bit about how this one community called the Jewish Barrio came into being. Its name is Venta Prieta, which means dark windows. It is a crypto-Jewish community founded by Maria Trinidad Teles Uran, who was born in 1838. She and her ancestors, obviously she didn't, had fled the Spanish Inquisition, and they were known as Marranos. Ma Trini, as she was known, and her children started this small village with a synagogue in the state of Hidalgo. The Jewish community today is even more observant than they were then. It started as a stopping post along the El Camino Real between Mexico City and Pachuca, which is the capital of Hidalgo. It is 180 kilometers northwest of Mexico City. There was one highlight on a man whose name was Shimon Islas Olvera. He is the Jewish community president. He and his family worked very hard to keep Jewish traditions alive. They harvested corn, beans, barley, alfalfa, and lettuce, and they raised enough money to build a synagogue, which they called Negev, because they found it was as isolated as the desert in Israel. They continue to raise money and send money to the Jewish National Fund regularly to plant trees in Israel. They cannot afford a rabbi, but a visiting rabbi comes from Mexico City every 2 weeks for weddings and whatever else he can do to help. The women are the pillar of this community. On Thursdays, they meet to discuss what is best for the children of the community. And on Fridays, they work as a unit to prepare for the Sabbath. They even take challah that they've baked to a local bakery to use the ovens. The Jews of Venta Prieta are focused on passing on Jewish knowledge, and they believe that this will be their children's greatest heritage. Since the Inquisition followed the Marranos to Mexico, it was still difficult to openly be Jewish. So the community of Venta Prieta welcomes all religious persuasions today. Most of the residents are conservative. They keep kosher, but they're shunned by the Orthodox community. Why? Because they can't prove their matrilineal birth. Because going back in time, the Orthodox believe that at one time the women had to have been converts. They were not born Jewish. That is what's going on in Mexico. I have one more group called the Inca Jews. They are in Trujillo, Cajamarca, and Lima, Peru. In the early 19th century, Sephardic Jews from Morocco came to Peru as traders and trappers. Rubber brought more Europeans later on. Before and after World War II, Ashkenazi Jews migrated to Lima, the capital city, but ignored the Peruvian Jews because, again, just like in Mexico, according to the Orthodox, the maternal lines were questionable and questionable and assumed not to be Jewish, as you previously heard about the other Jews that I told you. Most of the 3,000 Jews who are there now are Ashkenazi. In the 1960s, a man named Segundo Villanueva and his followers renounced Christianity and began practicing Judaism. They believed that Jewish customs were more in line with God's commandments. They were all self-taught because there was no rabbi to give them any guidance. Their determination and cooperation with each other have also enabled them to attain a high level of Jewish learning, even without a rabbi. There is a small town called Chan Chan. It's the largest mud city outside of the city of Trujillo. One man, his name was Prospero, with a very long Mexican name, or Peruvian name that I couldn't understand. He changed his name to Yaakov when he began practicing Judaism in 1976. He keeps kosher and observes all the holidays. I had asked if there's a picture to show you. Do you have
Do
it?
that if you want. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I thought this was a really cool picture because it shows you how he keeps a kosher kitchen. And of course, it's nothing like a kitchen we have. There it is. One wall has a sign for milchik, and the other wall on the other side has a sign for fleshik. And that's the kosher kitchen. I thought that would be a cool picture to see. Thank you, Sherry. Another man whose name is Julio has a courtyard in his home that they use for the synagogue. About a dozen men pray every day. Again, like the other community, the women are the ones that work together to prepare for the Sabbath. And again, they borrow an oven from a baker in order to bake challah. Peru has not felt like home since the practice of Judaism began. There's no religious freedom in Peru, so it's hard to find employment that allows you to take off from work for the Shabbat. Out of 3,000 Jews in Peru, nearly 300 Inca Jews made Aliyah in 2002. Many of them are waiting for their opportunities also, because they will then leave. In closing, before I did this research, I never thought about the fact that there were Jews in such remote, small, really outreach, totally far from anybody else, areas far from the main populations and countries. But reading about these countries opened my eyes to the fact that the Jews in these remote areas are very observant. Regardless of many adversities that they face, including discrimination and lack of materials for them, they still observe readings in the Torah, and they look forward to making Aliyah to Israel, just like many generations before them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very nice. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm going to thank you so much. You taught us a lot, and you went into some history that I had never heard. I am going to be telling you about Kulanu. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Fine. Kulanu originated in 1940 following the air flight rescue of Ethiopian Jews by Israelis. I'm sure many of you remember about it.
Uh-huh.
They have no main office. Along the eastern coast, a group of more than 20 volunteers, plus a small staff, work out of their homes. They're all volunteers, and they have formed the board and the working heart of Kulanu. Several of the board members are rabbis. They have regular meetings and plenty of intercommunication. They are reached through Kulanu Inc., meaning incorporated, online, where they have a form to complete for inquiries. Dr. Zeller served as president for 14 years, and then his treasurer from 2002 to 2009 became president, and Dr. Zeller continues as emeritus president. Technical director Sarah Page Podolsky is an Israeli and first discovered Kulanu when her family was looking to donate Judaica items that had belonged to her granduncle when he passed away. The family wanted to make sure that his tefillin and the talit and other pieces would be put to good use. Kulanu found them a new home in an isolated community in El Salvador. Sarah Page started to donate, but wanted to find a way to contribute on a more personal level. In 2014, she wrote to the president, Harriet Bogart. Harriet discovered that Sarah Page had technical expertise. She holds a degree as an electrical engineer and has worked in a high-tech industry in Israel. A perfect match made that would change the way Kulanu communities functioned. They're able to access learning materials, to assist in finding information they need to live Jewishly. Kulanu regularly receives photo updates and reports from community leaders. She's been a key player, especially with 8 communities that she has really put on internet connectivity. There have been many transformations. Desiree Zidell has been director of Kulanu Center for Special Services since 2002. She began as a student of Judaic studies, and then she worked on math and social studies. She became a rabbi in 2012. Kulanu sells handmade African cloth talits, kippots, challah covers. They make their own CDs featuring native music and newly composed music. Kulanu has created 13 online speaker series, all available upon request. Kulanu encourages rabbis and trained educators to give personal time to teach reading Hebrew and to learn Torah. You know that they've helped build synagogues. They collect Jewish artifacts and send them to these communities, whatever helps them in their Jewishness. Kulanu is engaged with 31 communities now, not just 16. As if that's not enough, they've been very helpful in setting up Beit Hatzufot, a new museum of the Jewish people in Tel Aviv, which opened on February 21st, 2021. They have tours online. Since 2017, Facebook works with Kulanu to collect in increments of $10, $20, whatever, up to $100, and they pay all the postal and paper costs for transferring money through its network of help for community recovery and in support of nonprofits. Donations are tax deductible, and the nonprofits US 501 program, which is popular here in America, are also tax deductible. Kulanu can be seen on Twitter, LinkedIn, and JDC, the Jewish Distribution Committee. The JDC started in 1914. It's over 100 years old and has never stopped helping Jews wherever they are. Another organization is called Scattered Among Nations, short SAN, S-A-N. The author of the book, Brian Schwartz, has visited 100 communities and is available for lectures. The book's 2 photographers, Jay Sand and Sandy Carter, have produced more books on the subject. They have a large selection of traveling exhibits available for libraries, schools, galleries, synagogues. Jay has a recording of Jewish prayer service for self-education. They have a large selection of traveling exhibits, slide presentations, and programs for young children. The few articles that Kulanu has are also available through Sam. So there you have the story of the communities listed in this book. And I think that our social work people should include Kulanu as one of our needs to help in small ways. Certainly, if we have books that are available to them, we should be sending it to them. And that closes up our presentation. I'm sorry that more people weren't interested in finding out about these communities. And I guess learning about past Jewish histories is not always the favorite topic for our sisterhood. I hope that you have all enjoyed this. I thank our presenters for an amazing group of presenters.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Ray.
for permitting us
Thank you,
to
Ray.
do this,
That
Sharon.
was a wonderful, wonderful program and
Yes.
presentation.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Very wonderful.
I
Very
just,
comfortable.
yeah.
Very
I-
informative.
Yes, thank you, Ray.
Hi. Yeah. I've been, I think it was either Cancun or Cabo, but they had a kosher restaurant there right by when you got off the ship. And I went in and it was really nice. It's near the international, the jewelry mart. And it was,
Sharon's favorite place.
huh?
Your favorite
Favorite,
place, the
yeah,
jewelry
shopping,
mart.
shopping jewelry. But it was very nice. Yeah, I was there with a friend and they coach a restaurant. So I was impressed, you know. Who would have thought Cancun, Cabo, but
Well, I'll take back the meeting for a minute now. Thank you again, Ray, for organizing all of this and suggesting the book. And look in this month's or last month's shofar, and you can get to that website. And I'm not sure how much the book costs as e-version, because when I originally looked it up, it was $4.99 everywhere. And then when I looked a couple weeks ago, it had gone up to $12, $11, $9. It varied, but you can always look on Amazon for used copies also.
I'd
So-
like to interrupt a moment and say that this book that I have, which is a heavy, big book,
Move it
is
over
so
to your
full of
right.
marvelous pictures.
Move it over. Yes. Thank you.
It is full of marvelous
Scattered
pictures.
among the nations, okay.
Well, again, you can look in the shofar or your emails, and you can find the website. And from the website, and the book is named the same. And you can just Google your friend Google. You can Google it and find it for sale. And the same thing. And I was going to show just briefly. I'm going to just share a screen for a moment again, and this is Kulanu's website.
oh,
Wow.
Wait a minute.
Oh, they're cute.
Kulani supports isolated emerging and
There we
return.
go. This is
These are very
Kulanu's
orthodox
website,
little boys.
and it's just kulanu.org, or just again Google Kulanu, and then they have this donate and they have contact. Because Ray wanted me to give the address, but it's pretty small the way it's written. So again, you can easily
Beautiful.
go to the website and find out more
oh,
of their activities. They have communities, similar or more communities, and they have a blog, and then they have contact. So, and this is the form that Ray mentioned. So,
very nice.
and I just, where did I go? Oh,
Any sum that you would send through this form would be handled by
there we go.
oh, what's the name of the Facebook? They will see to it that your money goes to the place that you want it to.
Okay, well, not everybody's on Facebook, but anyway, and I want to make one comment about an emerging community, because they use that term. And this is an article in the Washington Post on the 14th of April, and it's called The Emerging Jews of Colombia. And this is a whole community of evangelical Jews that are converting to Orthodox Judaism. And I know Washington Post has a paywall, but I think you can look at a few articles a month. So if you want to see another community, all of these people have changed their names to very Hebrew sound names. Like here's someone named Rivka. Formerly her name was Loida Espinoza. And it's very similar to some of the stories that were told. And then one other comment, I don't know who, since I'm a cooking program fan, if anybody has seen Patty Hinich and her Mexican cooking. She is the daughter of Ashkenazi Jews, and she did grow up in Mexico City. So you might have another view if you ever watch her show, even though she uses a lot of pork. But okay, Judy, I know you want to close.
I just want to thank everybody for being a part of Sisterhood this past year, which has been very difficult with COVID. But we all survived, we all made it, and now we have to look forward to next year, which I had talked to everybody. We're going to have a board meeting on May 17th, which is the third Monday of May, and that's going to help us gather up different programs that we can have for Shari, who is program chairman, and then that way we can get going and be ready after Yom Kippur to possibly we be able to do it inside the temple, or we will stay on Zoom. But those are things that we're thinking about of what I have to do. So I'm going to have an email sent to the Sisterhood board to let them know what time, and the day is May 17th, and that way if there's
what time?
Well, usually noon.
10 noon?
Yeah.
Not 10.
Yeah. And this way we can, if you have reports that you need to get to Reva Lit, she needs to have them at least 2 weeks before so she can get them in her step. And then that way we can have a short board meeting. We haven't had many board meetings this year, that's for sure. But we have to do it. Huh?
You mean none?
Maybe that too. And this way we can be prepared for next year. And I wish you all a easy spring, summer. Be safe, and then possibly for Yom Kippur, we can see everybody again. The human being.
That would be nice.
Thank you so much.
Thank everybody.
Thank you, Shari. Thanks, Shari. Feel better.
Yeah, thank you. And Judy?
Yes.
Is there any checks for deposit, or you
Well,
need?
I might go over one day this week and see.
Okay. All right.
Maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, have a good summer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you on Zoom or in the